Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a brand new Nottingham Forest podcast hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and fellow Forest fan from across the Atlantic. It's Richard Spray. How you doing, Richard?
Doing fantastic. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I normally have a piece of music lined up for you at this point because we always like to try and introduce you with music. But you know what happens is when you try and push the button and it disappears on you. So I should have. So that's
Classic.
how you screw up an introduction when you think, oh no, I haven't got that lined up. But there we go. Anyway, if you're joining us for the first time, welcome to the channel, and if you've been here before, welcome back. Coming up, we'll discuss the ongoing saga surrounding the City ground. Take a look as the first team players report back for duty. There's a roundup of all the latest transfer news as well before Richard's regular lightning round. Now, for today's episode, we're thrilled to be joined by a young man who has built up quite the social media profile over the past few years as he has commented and written about Nottingham Forest for various outlets. So please welcome to Talking Reds. It's Callum Castel. How you doing?
Hey, how are we?
We're good, man. We're good. It's really good to have you with us. Thanks for taking the time out to be with us, to chat about Forest. We've seen you on a couple of other podcasts in the past, so it's really good to have you with us. We're grateful for you joining us. Anyone who's watching along, please, if you've got anything to say, do hop into the comments if you can and give us your views. But we want to get started straight away, Callum, and just find out a bit more about you. So tell us your Forest story, if you can.
Yeah, I was a little bit of a late bloomer with football in general, and my dad's a big Forest fan. My family's a little bit scattered around, so I've got family all over the place, but they ended up in the Midlands in Nottingham, and my dad had tried to convince me to support Forest for a long time and watch football in general. And as a kid, I just couldn't get my head around it. I didn't really try and get into football too much, so I was a little bit late. I started kind of watching football in the background if I was at the pub with the family and stuff like that. And I saw Cristiano Ronaldo playing, and that was pretty much it for me. I started loving football, and that was it. My dad took me to my first Forest game. I devoted myself to the club, and from that point on, it was sort of going from watching a bit of football on TV to going and walking into the stadium. That grasped me really, really hard, and I've just loved the club ever since. And it's been a love-hate relationship as always, because it wasn't the prettiest. We weren't the prettiest club when I was young. I think we just got out of League One when I started to watch us, and it's just something. Football in general is a massive passion, but Forest, people talk recently about kind of there's a lot of talk about club or country and all this kind of stuff, and whether you'd want to have a throw-in for your club over England winning anything, all that kind of stuff. I don't mess around with it too much, but I'm definitely a club person over anything. I love the club.
Yeah, I think we can definitely agree with that. So you started following Forest, like you said, a bit later. So take us back to what? Can you remember your first game? How old would you have been? Can you remember anything about that?
Yeah, I was really young for my first ever game. So my first official game, I can barely remember it. I know that I went with my dad, and it was Crewe 0-0, Crewe Alexandria 0-0, and my dad let me do a chant about the referee, which was inappropriate on the bus once. That was my one memory, was that I was allowed to say something about the referee because, as you can imagine, they probably weren't that good. And then, I just, again, after that, being a kid, I didn't really kind of take too much notice over football for a while. And then I went back to my first game, would have been, when I really got back into football, would have been Preston at home. 3-0 we won. Adebola, McGugan, and I want to say Paul McKenna scored. And that was the game. That was like, again, going from watching it on TV and bits like that and going to the stadium on a cold Tuesday night. And my mate from school had tapped me on the shoulder. I didn't realise that people from school were going to be at the game. That's how much I kind of knew little about football. It was just like, wow, it's a community. Everyone, like people that I know, are here straight away. And that was it. That was when I really got into football. So yeah, it was officially when I was really young. We went Crewe Alexandria. So again, not too much memory as you can imagine. But yeah, as a I think I was about 12 or 13 when I really started watching football. So it really was quite late. And it was that season, that Victor Chandler season under Billy Davis, that we did really well in as well. So yeah, I kind of got caught in it. And then false hope, because we went up and down in terms of how good we were. But yeah, it was around that point.
So your dad's a big Forest fan, and he started taking you. Does he still go? Is he a season ticket holder, for example, or anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, like my family's all over the place. He's my technically my stepdad. He took me on since I was 1 year old, so it's like he's my actual dad. But my biological dad's side of the family is Spurs. My mum's from Liverpool, so they're Everton, and it's just my dad who is a Forest fan in the family. And I was raised to be a Forest fan, and then my younger brother again was raised to be a Forest fan as well. My brother's a season ticket holder, so he's at every single game. My dad he has his own business back home in Nottingham, so he's a builder, and he basically, a gardener, all sorts of kind of stuff, and he works all hours. So he goes to what he can, and otherwise he's on the radio. My earliest memories were in the car with my dad with the radio on, shouting at whatever was happening. So yeah, it's me and my brother mainly really go to as much as we can.
It's always interesting. We really enjoy hearing how people get exposed to Forest, and I got it from my dad, and Richard from his grandfather, and obviously this is your dad. You say your stepdad, but now your brother as well. So it's seeing that baton being passed down the generations that keeps a club and its fan base thriving. So I can imagine that he must have had stories for you when you were in your teens about Clough years and the glory days, and Stuart Pearce and Des Walker in their kind of years and stuff like that. How frustrating was it for you going to watch Forest at places like Crewe and Preston, knowing that you'd missed out on going to the Liverpools and the Manchester Uniteds?
Horrendous, honestly, horrendous. For my whole life as well. Because I'd walk through upstairs in the house, and there's a Trevor Francis portrait on the wall, and there's pictures everywhere, and there's stories, and it was such a deep desperation through my whole life to watch us get promoted. I used to dream about scenarios and how it would happen, and I always dreamed and hoped that it would be at Wembley. This is really funny. I used to go to the sunbed sometimes, and it would be a 9-minute sunbed, and I'd spend that 9 minutes, because there's nothing else to do, just making up a scenario in my head, and it would be always the start of the season. My belief was always that you would have to have, watching other teams go up, it would have to have the right players, you'd have to have the right manager, you'd have to have the right staff, you'd have to have everything fall into place to get out of that league, to get out of the Championship. And if we got a new player, and there was someone that caught my eye, I remember Albert Adoma. The season that he came in, I was just convinced Albert Adoma was going to score the winner at Wembley, and the desperation was it was unhealthy, and I genuinely was. I was worried I was going to go my whole life without watching us get promoted, and that was all that ever mattered to me in life. Over even like cup runs, if I used to always be quite happy with cup runs if we could ever string one together, which again we never could until Steve Cooper. But it was promotion and being in the Premier League and being able to watch us play against a Premier League club. Like I said, my real dad's side of the family is Spurs, so we had them in the cup once, and we took the lead early and ended up losing, and that was as close as I got to even speaking to family members about that kind of stuff. So horrendous. My dad had a lot of memories, but I didn't really have much to cling on to. Like I can reel you off that 3-0 game against Preston, and when we went down 1-0 against Huddersfield and won 6-1. There's all sorts of memories, but there was never really anything as big as kind of like maybe Huddersfield or something like that. There was never anything too much to cling on to. So that first season going up, just seeing teams like Liverpool on the fixture list, even West Ham. And bits like that. It's great to be here, but it was a long time coming.
Yeah, I mean, I was curious because Richard and I, and people of our kind of age, we've seen the Clough years. We've been to Wembley League Cups, challenging for, you know, places in what was the first division. And then obviously those 23 years out, there's a whole catchment of Forest fans of your age. So your friends and friends that you perhaps go to the football with and talk about now that are in your age group that were just pining and dying for it to happen for the very first time for them. We were dying for us to get up, just to get back to where we felt we really belonged because we'd been there before. But so when it happened, when we were at Wembley and it actually happened and we got promoted and you realised that Nottingham Forest are Premier League, just how did that feel for you as a 26, 27-year-old? I mean, a 25-year-old at the time, I think. How did that feel? Was it surreal? Was it a dream?
Yeah. It's honestly, it's something that makes me feel emotional to this day, because I even remember getting to the stadium and just the tickets, the way the tickets worked at the time. I was sat next to a group, two lads to the left of me that were, I think, were a bit older than me, and two lads to the right of me that were much younger than me, and they were brothers. And we were just all talking, and it was just that kind of family feeling straight away, and just being in a strange place, because that Wembley was a strange place to me at the time. It wasn't somewhere that I'd been outside to have a look with my granddad when he took me to London, but to a game I'd never been. And just, I remember just all of us just hugging at the full-time whistle. The desperation for that, like, for the stoppage time. When you're saying blow the whistle, ref, like last night when the minutes were added on against the Netherlands, you just saying please blow the whistle. It was less of a league game. Go on, blow the whistle. This would be a good 3 points, and it was more of a, if I hear that whistle, it's going to mean everything. And yeah, it was a dream, because I really genuinely I thought it wasn't going to happen. But the season we went up, we were bottom of the league for a while. I genuinely thought the next step was going to be League One more than it was going to be the Premier League at the time. I just thought that I just didn't know if we'd ever get it together. And yeah, when that full-time whistle went, indescribable. I always said that if we got promoted, I could die a happy man. And then I said, well, actually, when we got promoted, as long as I see us do a Premier League season, I'll die a happy man. And then we did. And I said, right, okay, as long as we can get to mid-table, I'll die a happy man. But yeah, everything feels like a dream. Every target, reaching each target, it's amazing. And I don't think a lot of other fan bases can really, I don't know, like it's different. I know that there's good, like Ipswich and Luton, bits like that. It will have felt almost the same, but I don't know. It just, for us, because of the stories and everything that the kind of the different generations have experienced, it felt like we were missing out so much. And yeah, I can't describe it. Just going up, staying up. It was even staying up. It was the day we stayed up against Arsenal. I was shivering. It was a different kind of emotion to when we went up. The desperation levels, but yeah, it's something I'll never forget.
I think those 9 minutes on the sunbed when you had those moments in your mind, those fantasies of putting together the perfect manager and the perfect blend. It sounds like you manifested it, because really that's kind of what happened. We had the perfect manager with the perfect blend. It just was like magic and chemistry coming together. And all of a sudden we got what we all wanted. And I was at Wembley and I was crying, and it was the best day of my life, because I mean, I'd been to Wembley to League Cup finals and other stuff, but just to get back up again, and just the unbridled joy, the unbridled emotion was just something I'll never forget. And then I was lucky enough to be at Crystal Palace away on the last game of the season at the end of our first Premier League season. We'd already secured our status for another year with that Arsenal win that you just referenced. So to be at Palace and just to have that party, which so many people listening and everyone else knows about, was just, again, an absolute carnival. So it's been really, really good to be back in the Premier League, back where I think we all feel we belong. And you know, it's not been easy riding. We've had a few ups and downs with the points deduction and so on, but feeling so positive about the coming season. And the thing that I think's really helped everyone feel even more positive, guys, was the news that came out a few days back about it looking likely that we're going to be staying at the City Ground after all the ups and downs and talk. there was the statement that came out, or firstly, I think in the Athletic that the two sides were back talking. It was all being confidential. And then Danny Taylor in the Athletic said that, it was pretty much a done deal that Forest were going to buy the freehold. And then we had this statement, which I'm not going to read, but it's just on the screen, which is the new leader of the council, Nottingham City Council, I should say, Negat Khan. She talked about being proud to announce that talks with Nottingham Forest have resulted in principal terms being agreed by the club to buy the land on which the city ground sits. And of course, we all heard this, and everyone's popping champagne because the spectre of Toten or other places vanished very, very quickly. Everyone's feeling really, really happy. But then, of course, we then had the club come out, and they wanted to make sure that feet were firmly on the ground still by commenting that, for absolute clarity, we do continue to work on the terms for a conditional deal for the purchase of the freehold. They go on to say that any decision to purchase the freehold will entirely be conditional on Nottingham Forest first being granted the relevant permissions that will allow us to realize our hugely ambitious plans for a significantly larger stadium capacity, world-class hospitality spaces, and associated substantial real estate development in the vicinity of the ground. So we know that Marinakis is ambitious. He talked about potentially wanting to move away to realize that ambition. And staying for him means we are going to do big things with what we've currently got. And Rushcliffe Borough Council, who are the council that we need to approach to for the planning permission to do anything with the ground, they tweeted out. So it was a proper merry-go-round. We granted Nottingham Forest planning permission for the latest planning application to extend ground capacity and associated development in 2022. And should any further plans come forward, these will go through our usual independent planning process. And breathe. So it was quite a mad 24 hours, really, with things being said by different people in different places. What do you make of that, Callum? How important is it, firstly, that Forest stay at the City Ground? What kind of capacity do you really feel that we should be aiming for? And how soon do you feel that this needs to be really finally put to bed?
Very soon, hopefully, because the statement the other day, there was excitement around just the idea of staying, because I think at first I kind of thought it was a little bit of leverage, the Toten stuff, but the more that I realised it could become a possibility that we would move to Toten, I started to panic quite a lot, and just the kind of idea of having that plan destroyed was perfect at the time. To hear that we may just be staying at home, it means everything to me personally. I wouldn't want to go anywhere else. I think we're in the perfect location. We've got all those memories there. If he can just work on the stadium and do what he wants to do, I think that's the best outcome for everyone. I just can't imagine it being anywhere else. I mean, if they were going to do anything and it was close by, then okay, reluctantly, but Toten, far out from the city centre, there's no chance. I wouldn't like it at all. I think it's perfect. It's a perfect walk to the city centre. It's by the river. It's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful stadium. All the memories are there. Capacity wise, I mean, it depends, because there's a lot of people looking for tickets, and it's difficult to get tickets. So the bigger the better, but the priority for me is just staying at home. I think we concur massively that staying at home, being at City Ground is hugely important. The location is perfect. My view is that work around the ground is going to be vital to making sure that it's not just not something that's going to come up again in the sort of 10, 15 years time, because it could well be that it's not done properly and we're successful, perhaps, will be hope. And again, thoughts to move might resurface. Richard, what did you think about the to and fro between the councils and the club over the last week?
Yeah, I kind of like what Ian's saying. I think it's pretty reasonable how the club tried to temper expectations a little bit, right? Um, Obviously, from a momentum standpoint, it as Callum referenced, there was that initial thought like this is not going to happen. We're genuinely going to move away from one of the most historic grounds in the history of football, right? So, and like he said, is indelibly connected to everything that we hold sacred about this club. But at the same time, seeing that article come out, even the subsequent sort of, I hate to call it a retort, but somewhat of a retort from the club itself, I still felt a lot of positivity. Like this is still a reality. I genuinely believe now this is where we're going to stay for decades to come. Right. So I think from that perspective, it's definitely a step in the right direction, as was any positive conversations that were happening, because it clearly was reached a point where there was just sort of felt like an impasse. Right. It was just becoming a bit of bickering in the social media spaces. And so it was great to see something feel a little bit more definitive. Yeah, maybe the head of the council was a little premature in releasing that, but at the same time, just the general air of it, the general feeling about all of it. And I think this has been said other podcasts as well, was absolutely embedded in positivity. It was never an optimism. Never felt like, oh my gosh, here we go. We're going to get the carrot's going to get dangled and then pulled away, right? And Toten will suddenly become the new reality again. But I don't think so. I think we're here. We're there to stay for good.
I think so. Ian, who's listening in from Toronto. Hey, Ian, good to have you with us again, mate. He says the club has a point, though. It is pointless buying the freehold if Rushcliffe won't sanction planning permission. And yes, I mean, that's fair. My view is that the freehold is available for something like 7 to 10 million. We don't know the figure exactly, but certainly no more than 10. My view is that buying the freehold anyway isn't such a bad thing, because then you have complete control and you immediately push aside the city council from the equation. And, you know, if, God forbid, you didn't get the planning you wanted and we did end up looking to move away, you still own the freehold, you still own the land. And so as investors and as business people, having that land that you own to do with what you want to do it with, potentially, I kind of feel is an investment that for that kind of money, the club should just make anyway, just to kind of tidy things up. It may well be that they're still trying to play brinkmanship with Rushcliffe. So, you know, as soon as they buy the freehold, it's a statement of real intent. So I kind of feel that they're probably holding off on buying it so that Rushcliffe have their minds sharpened, shall we say, towards the planning that comes in from Forest. But, you know, just to go back to the slide quickly that I put on previously, and going back to the club's comments, you know, it's really important that we remember that they're talking about realising our hugely ambitious plans for a significantly larger stadium capacity, world-class hospitality spaces, and associated substantial real estate development in the vicinity of the ground. So that's the ambition. And anything that gets in the way of that is going to cause this to go on and on and on. We are going to be doing another episode in 2 days' time. Matt Druitt, the architect, who was with us on an episode previously, he came on and took us through his own design about what he would love to see happen or something like that at the City Ground site. He's going to come back on for part 2 to have a chat about what potentially the club might do in terms of now they're looking to stay and redevelop what they've got. So we're going to be releasing an episode with Matt Druitt in a couple of days' time, and we'll get more into the stadium and more as to what it might look like with him in that episode. So let's move on. Callum, we ask everyone coming on to have a think about who they have loved seeing wear the Garibaldi red. So we asked you to put together your own personal Forest 11. Castel's Reds are now on the screen. We don't have time to go through the ins and outs of every position, but if you could take us through your team succinctly, we'd be grateful. I noticed straight away a certain Jed Spence at right back. So over to you. You're muted, mate.
Sorry, that's
There you
my
go.
bad.
There you go.
I knew I would be. Yeah, there's a good blend there of players that I grew up watching and enjoyed. Julian Bennett. I know that Wes Morgan went on to win the Premier League as well. Some ballers, and Majewski was one of my favourites growing up. A little bit heartbroken to leave McGugan out, but just didn't have the positions. And then the players that got us up there. The players that got us promoted, they have to be technically better than the players beforehand because they did it. Jed Spencer's there for that reason. I did want to put Matty Cash there. I did also look and think about Nico Williams, but I just think that one season from Jed for me was special, so special. I had big expectations for him, which I still think could have come to fruition if he hadn't gone to Tottenham. So it's a big shame, but yeah, that season was special. And then I've got you players like Murillo and Gibbs-White and Johnson that have done it in the Premier League. Gibbs-White for me, I don't really think there's any way he could not be the best player that I've ever watched, with the fact that I believe he's our best player now and has been since we were promoted. So given that we were in the Championship the rest of the time, it's him. Murillo, not too far behind. And then Yatesy. I couldn't not include someone from our academy who got us up to the Premier League, helped keep us in the Premier League 2 seasons in a row, and would run through brick walls for us. And obviously Chris Cowan as well. I love that man. Met him outside Blockbuster when that was a thing. So
It's been a while ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. So yeah, there's a good blend there. Samba, you can't just that night against Sheffield United. That's it for me. Felt bad leaving a few out. Lee Camp, Jack Colback. There were a few that I really wanted to put in there, but those players for me hold great memories for me over my time being a Forest fan.
I think you've got a great selection. I noticed you've gone for the box midfield, and we talked right at the start of this episode about your age bracket and the teams that you've seen, and I think it's very easy to say, look, what's Forest's all-time greatest 11, all-time greatest? Everyone's got a different opinion, but it's a very personal thing. Players that mean something to you, the memories that you gained from seeing them play, completely can't argue at all about Jed Spence, because he absolutely took the club by storm in that one season. I mean, think about the impact he made with the fans talking about him, wanting him to stay, yearning for him once he'd gone, still talking about him now, wanting him to come back, although I think that's, diluted somewhat. So, Jed Spence all day long would, for someone of your age bracket in the last 5 years, 10 years, walks into that, and it'd probably be close to walking into my team as well. And Majewski, my wife's Polish, and so I've got a real soft spot for him. He was brilliant. And what is your view on Ryan Yates then? I mean, you put him in your team, so obviously you must love him and you must rate him. But he is a player at the club that really divides opinion historically. Where are you at with Ryan Yates and his place in the club?
I feel like I know what he is. I feel like he is a player that you bring on when you're defending a lead with half an hour, 20 minutes to go. This is Premier League, by the way. This is just Premier League. That's what he is. He's our heartbeat. He knows the team inside and out. When you think about the season that we went up, it was Worrell, Yates and Johnson who were those players that came through the academy. Yates, he really is the only one left technically if Worrell does go during this window. But I mean, look, he took us again. I wanted to look at Jimmy Garner because I talk about the players that took us up and the positions they played in. Yates was there week in, week out. He took us up there with all the other players. It wasn't just Spence, it wasn't just Johnson, it wasn't just Graben, it wasn't just Keenan Davis. Yates, he was there all along, and he took us up there when we were in the Championship and things weren't that great. People would call him a League One player. Now we're in the Premier League. People will call him a Championship player. He's not your most fashionable player. He's your Conor Gallagher. He's never going to get all the plaudits that he deserves, and he's not the most technically gifted. And people are probably bored of hearing people say that he's not the most technically gifted, but he's a Nottingham lad. He's a Forest fan. He's Forest through and through. He's doing it. He's been there. He's got us up. He's kept us in there twice. And do you know what? This season we might not see as much of him if Sangare comes through as who we expected him to be, and Elliot Anderson and players like that in midfield. We may not see as much of Ryan Yates. Some people will be really happy with that. Some people won't be. But either way, if he's asked to take a step back, he'll take a step back. If he's asked to come on and defend the lead for 20 minutes, he'll come on and defend the lead for 20 minutes. He's Forest. I love him. I love him as a person. I love him as a player. I know he's not the best. And if it was down to pure sort of ability and all that kind of stuff throughout the years, I might have gone for Colback. But I had to go for Yatesy because he holds a place dear in my heart, just as much as the other players. And he's still there and he's still going, and he'll be there for us all along.
Here. Can't argue with that. I love him. I think everything you've just said, I 100%. I'm with you on that. It's a good team. It's a great team. In fact, who's your captain?
Oh yes. Do you know what? It's.
I looked at 4 names there. I wonder which one you're going to pick.
I know there are. Yeah, I am looking at 4. I'm looking at 5 names. It's going to be one of the middle 2. And I think it's going to be Chrissy Cohen, to be honest with you.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, Chris Cohen did good things for our club in an era where we never really achieved anything apart from missing out on a couple of playoff with Billy. But no, hard to argue with any of that. Always interesting to hear what other people think about their preferred 11. So. Thanks very much. That's the Castell's Reds. Okay, right. So just quickly, we want to play you an ad on behalf of our sponsor. I'll play the ad. So if you're listening, you're going to get about 25 seconds of music. If you're watching, you're going to get to see some lovely cheese. So that's the Cheese Trader, Stu Freestone, friend of the show, sponsor of Talking Reds. He is the guy to go to if you want a bit of cheese. I was very lucky to get a nice cheesy box come through the post recently, and I can vouch that it's all good stuff. He's based in York, so if anyone's up in that area, then go in, quote Talking Reds over the counter in person. You'll get 10% off. If you want to make an order via email or phone or even Instagram, just quote Talking Reds when you order. You'll get 10% off. That's 10% off every time, not just one off, 10% off every time. He'll post it out. Next day delivery is £10 postage. And the details are there. The card's on the screen. We'll pop it in the bio as well. But Stu Freestone, he was on with us for a recent episode, the one with the Cheese Trader. And so we encourage you to go and look at that as well. And like I said, he does corporate functions, weddings, bar mitzvahs, any kind of function. He can cater for your needs. That's the Cheese Trader in York. Okay, so now it's time for this.
The lightning round!
Yes, sir. It's the lightning round, Callum. I don't know if you're a Friends fan or if you're too young for that, but for Greg and I, it's kind of a staple of our lives. But this is what inspired, and that's what inspired this segment of our show. So, all right, we're going to rapid fire these questions. All right, so we're going to start with, what was your favorite first Forest match live?
True.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm sorry, mate. Much better days after that, right? Or at least in the last couple of years.
Yeah, definitely.
Favorite Forest player of all time?
All time, Majewski.
Fantastic. Can't argue with that. I know Greg likes that. What player in Forest history would you like to see on the current squad?
Des Walker.
Brilliant. Yeah, he's a personal favorite of mine. That's our era, right, Greg?
Yeah, I love Des Walker.
Yeah, absolutely. Your favorite away or third kit?
Oh, that's a great question. I really liked the I really liked the old navy one. I had it on my 13th birthday, and it was kind of like checked, and it had the red collar, Victor Chandler. I got
that half and half one.
That's what that was inspired by. When it came back, it was half and half, and it was almost.
There was a half and half one, I think, in that era with the Victor Chandler, and then there was the one with the Football Index. I think was on it. Was it Football Index? But there was another half and half recently.
Yeah, that was it. So it was like. Yeah, that was it. It was inspired. No, the one that you mentioned with Football Index, that was half light blue, half dark blue. The old one it was kind of inspired by that, and it was kind of like navy, and I think it was half and half with the red. And I've just got distinct memories of Julian Bennett wearing it for some reason. With the Victor Chandler, but also big shout out to the one when we got promoted, the disgusting orange and yellow one that everyone fell in love with, including myself.
Everyone talks about that one. Everyone loves that. I think I'm gonna have to wear that one on the next episode. So.
I agree with that. Break it out, Greg.
I purchased this last week. I managed to get it off on eBay. So this is a long sought Grail shirt for me. Everyone wants this. It's the original. I mean, the Copa shirts they do in the club, great, and I can't diss anybody buying them, but it's not for me. I would need to own the original. So I never owned this shirt as a kid, because we're going back 30 years, right? So kid 20s or something like that. I never had it. So to find it again and get it in an XL, because that's kind of what I need these days, is was a good thing. So yeah, sorry to gatecrash your talk, but if we're talking kids, then I'm always going to get involved. So
he is. He's the maestro. What is your favorite Forest moment or memory?
Actually, my favorite, my brother was wearing that exact shirt for it, and it was the Sheffield United away second leg. That was above the even above Wembley and above the Arsenal day. That was special. And just to go back to the kit, I've got a similar sort of thing with that, with the Capital One black and blue one. I'm on the hunt for that, because that was one of the first ones as a kid that I want to get the original too.
Stripes.
Yes.
I had that on, I think, a couple of episodes ago. So that's a good shirt.
Great kit.
Yeah, there's very few that he won't have. I think we'll eventually get through them all, right? Maybe, Greg?
Well, no, honestly, there are. I'm not going to lie. There are several that I don't have, but I'm getting there.
All right. If you weren't a Forest fan, what club would you support?
It used to be, because of my family allegiances, it used to be kind of, I'd look out for Everton and Tottenham before we got promoted, and it was kind of cool to be able to say that I could watch a Premier League club and want them to win. But since we got promoted, actually I hate both of those clubs, and I have a deep rivalry with my family now, so I'd probably go with Mansfield, to be honest with you.
Oh, there you go. Keeping it relatively local. I like that.
I like it too, yeah. I like that.
You're required to spend one day with a fan from a team you despise/dislike. What team would that be?
Oh, God.
You got family members with some that you probably despise, like you just mentioned. So that might be easy, right? You can answer that question easily.
Very easily, yeah. I think Everton and Liverpool, to be honest with you. So my best mate's Liverpool, my family are Everton. So we'll go with that.
Brilliant. All right. Apart from Cloughie or Cooper, who was your favorite Forest manager?
Sabri Lamouchi.
Oh, really?
Nice.
Oh, wow. That's a curveball.
Interesting.
Wow.
Didn't expect that one.
I remember that's the first time I really actually thought that we could go anywhere in my life. I love Billy Davis, and I did love Karanka and certain managers, but Sabri Lamouchi, that was one of the first times I really felt a connection to a manager who I thought was just class, that was going to take us somewhere. And then Cooper came in and kind of put it all together in a big ball and was exactly everything that I ever wanted and became. So it's always going to be Steve Cooper. Obviously weren't around for the Cloughie days, but other than those two, Sabri Lamouchi.
Fantastic.
He just quickly, he nearly got us the capitulation out of the playoffs when we lost against Stoke and Swansea overtook us. For me, just instant negativity, really, if I'm honest with you. And I think because I think to go from where we were to blow it is just scandalous. But he did put us on the edge. I felt, was responsible for that away goal at Fulham. That was a beautiful move where everyone touched it, and I think it was Grab and popped it in the net, and that was a lovely bit of football. but at the same time, some of his football I thought was really turgid as well. So I've got quite a differing opinion on Lemucci. I've got respect for him, but us slipping out of the playoffs like that, I called for his instant dismissal because of that. And 5 games into the new season, he was gone, and that it was because it was Houghton that came. Was it Houghton after? Yeah, Houghton came in, and then we had the same kind of like rubbish, and then we had Stevie Cooper. So yeah, Lemucci's interesting. Is it, maybe I'm being a bit harsh on him. I don't know.
No, I wanted him gone. After the Stoke game, I did want him gone. I remember telling my brother, I said that's him done. And then as the season started, and he started the season, I thought that was confusing. And each game that went by, I kept saying he just needs to go. But it hurt. It wasn't like it was get him out like it was with Chris Hughton. And then Chris Hughton kind of brought me down to earth a little bit more and made me appreciate Sabri a little bit more. But I loved everything about Sabri, his aura. I just felt like he was cool. I just felt like he had control of everything, and it was the first time in a long time that I felt like we were going into games and that we were going to win. And like you say, that Fulham goal was special. And Cardiff away on my birthday, Thiago Silva. There was some special birthdays, but there were some special. My birthday was Derby when Martin Neal was in charge. That was my 21st birthday, and first time we beat them in a long time. And Roy Keane and Lampard were having it on the sides, and Beneloan scored. And I met Beneloan straight after the game outside Pitcher and Piano. So that was a special night. But that's away from Lemucci. But yeah, Sabri, I would say.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
I love the variety of answers we get, right, Greg? It's amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
If Forest could sign one player from a non-top 6 side, who would it be?
Oh, that's a great question. There's so many. If I had to, because I could reel off quite a few names right now, but if I had to pick one, I'm going to go with Eberici Eze, I would say. I think like players like, I would probably say Pickford as well. At this moment in time, what I think exactly what we need right now, if I was going to be like quite logistic with it, I would say Tarkowski is what we need to be next to Murillo. But yeah, Eze, I think he's, I would have said Elise, but he's not there anymore. But Eze is awesome.
Brilliant. It's a good pick. Can't argue with that. What is the one thing you would give up for a year that you see as essential to see Forest win the Premier League? So I think we've had Alan say he'd give up chips, right? So things like that. What can you deem essential?
We're talking something that actually, is going to
hurt.
It's going to hurt.
I would say coffee, but I feel like after a while I'd get used to it. So I think that's a bit of a cheat. Something that would hurt. My phone. I'd give it up. It'd be the worst year of my life. Could you imagine? Just I don't even live back home with my family or anything. I would just not be able to talk to anyone. I'd just sit in a room and just watch Forest each week.
You'd be able to realise what it was like for the likes of myself. When I was your kind of age, when we didn't have phones and we had CFAX, and we used to jump on to get the scores on the bloody teletext page on the TV.
Oh yeah.
So that's painful. So I can understand giving up your phone could be quite tough.
I am so good at lightning rounds.
Yes, thank you, Callum. Well done.
Thank you for that.
Okay, right. Let's just move on. I wanted to touch on some news from the women's team. We had the statement released earlier on in the week that Nottingham Forest women are to go full-time professional as Mr. Marinakis pledges major investment in women's sport. That means a full-time model that aims to target the Championship, then the WSL future for Forest women. So there's a clear pathway being thought about for the women's team. All 11 women's home league fixtures are to be played at the City Ground. There's going to be major investment in medical, training facilities and support services for the women's team. There'll be an expansion of grassroots facilities to remove barriers to access and opportunity for girls. The Forest chairman, Tom Cartledge, called it a momentous day And I would encourage anybody to go and look at his clip on the Forest Women Twitter page, where he talks a little bit more in detail about what that means for the club. So we're seeing the women's team going full time. How important do you feel that is, Richard, to see the women's team being given that status now?
I think it's fantastic, and I think I know that we talked about, like, Ollie, for example, will be incredibly happy about that, but as many others would too, clearly. And I think there was another club right recently that just came out and said that they were even announced like sort of their salaries, and it was pretty criminally low. And so it was great to see our owner and our the upper echelon of our club, that management group, actually investing in them and making it clear to everyone around them in the social media space that, we value what they do for this club and for this brand and help building it. I think I mentioned that last time when we talked about this too, about that concept of building the brand and letting that become something that clearly we associate with the men's first team, but now it goes much deeper than that. And just as Tom Cartledge talked about, I think with Matt Davis, he talked about the importance that there is for Marinakis to invest in the community. And clearly this women's team is a huge part of this community, and it set the stage for younger women coming up and playing the game, and how they see these people making a life of it and fulfilling their dreams and playing professional football. And so I think it's a great thing. It'll get these girls out playing more. And just like he said, he wants these kids to exercise. He wants these kids to be out and about and playing sports. And so I think it's just all part of that sort of, that focal point for him of really providing something to Nottingham that is really unique and really, really meaningful and impactful.
News from the women's team in the form of Holly Manders signing a new contract with the club. She is a midfielder. She scored 16 times in her first season at the club last year. She signed, as I say, a 1-year deal. She looks delighted, and I know that the management team on the women's side are thrilled to have her sign on, as well as Sophie Domingo. She's also signed a new contract with Nottingham Forest. She's a winger, and this is her first full-time contract. So with the women's team going full-time professional, Sophie Domingo signing a full-time contract with the club. It's a 1-year deal. She's made over 50 appearances for Nottingham Forest women, scoring 20 goals. And so this is really, like you say, Richard, how things are going to be going forwards, with not just the men's team, but the women's team now having access to the facilities during the daytime. I think Tom Cartledge talked about in his clip that, they were playing at different places and trying to get grounds or pitches to play on in the evening, and all that kind of stress has all been removed now. So they're going to be integrated fully into the club in a full-time capacity. And we are, all for that. Going back to the men's team then, Callum, finally, we had the unveiling a few days ago of the giant himself, Carlos Miguel, the Brazilian goalkeeper. What did you make of Carlos Miguel, and how excited are you to see him play for Forest?
I'm excited. I feel like the price is really risk free, so I'm excited to not be burnt again a little bit, because we know that we've got Matt Sells and we know what he's about. So Miguel could either be as good and become the starting keeper, or maybe he could just be a backup keeper. I'm not too sure what it is, but it's not like we broke the bank for him. It sounded like there was supposed to be a large release clause on him that he had basically taken out of the contract, and he'd lowered it by quite a lot, which is obviously what we ended up getting him for. I can't help but feel like if other clubs knew about that, they'd have triggered it. I can't help but feel like Murillo may have had a word or two to say about that. So hopefully that was the case. But Murillo seems to love him, and the Corinthians fans seem to love him. The only thing that me and a lot of Forest fans will identify with a tall keeper is Pantilimon. But I don't feel like it's that kind of I don't feel like it's that kind of player. Apparently he's very good with his reflexes, and he can get down well. I've seen some clips of him as well recently in the past few weeks. Some amazing saves. I think actually what's been discussed is recently that his kind of weakness may be that he punches the ball rather than collects it in the air, which is strange for someone of his height. So hopefully that's something they can train him on. And obviously Nuno's a goalkeeper himself, so I know that we said that might help with Turner and Vlachodimos, which it didn't, but Nuno's probably had a hand in signing Carlos Miguel, which he did with Matt Sells as well. So it's nice to see him get some goalkeepers himself. And yeah, it can only be a positive move. I think we can have Sells, Miguel, and maybe a academy keeper as a third choice. Maybe Matt Turner if he stays. I'm not too sure. Doesn't sound like he will, but yeah, I'm excited. I feel like it's smart business. Because yeah, I'm happy with Sells as it is. There can be improvements there. So if Carlos Miguel is that, then great.
Yeah, I think we talked about, Richard and I, that we felt the goalkeeper department in terms of a number one was fairly set. We've been happy with Sells. I know some people aren't as happy with Sells, but I think he's a good goalkeeper and he really brought stability to that position. It had been an absolute mess with Turner and Odysseus Vlachodimos. So Sells for the second half of the season, I thought was very good for us, but you can always improve. I don't have a problem with a goalkeeper punching. I was about to say I used to play in goal, like I'm some kind of special goalkeeper. But whenever all through my playing days as an absolute nobody, I always played in goal. And getting the ball clear, if you can, is always got to be one of the most important things. Yes, you want to catch it if you can, but after last season and the amount of goals we let in at set pieces, for example, if the ball's coming in and we've got a guy punching it clear and it's going to safety, then that's a lot better than him not getting anything on it and it ending up in the back of the net. So I haven't got a problem with the punching side of things. Nathan Joyce, who appeared with Matt on Forest Focus and Red Side of the Trent as well recently, we were going to have him on, but it felt like he'd kind of been taken. So he also had been approached by the club, and I'm really chuffed for Nathan because he's clearly a guy that has worked really hard to build up the Copper Club. And go and check out them, definitely, if you're listening. But he's on the Forest website talking about Carlos Miguel in great detail. So he's the guy to listen to. But the proof will be in the pudding, right? Let's get this guy on the grass. Let's see him in action. The eye test will tell us what we want to know about him. But his interview with the club was amazing. I just, I'm a sucker for a guy who says the right things, because he said everything perfectly, and you just fell in love with him. You thought, man, this guy could be brilliant. Murillo definitely had a role in bringing her over. He talks about Murillo's influence. Murillo, I noticed in today, seems like he's changed number from number 40 to number 5. So read into that what you will. That I feel like the club are going to try and hold on to him. I'm sure that he'll probably end up going, but we have been thinking about targets, and Richard's been doing a little bit of work on who Forest might be looking at and who we might try to sign in that centre-back position, thinking that Murillo possibly will go. But even if he doesn't go, we still might see 2 centre-backs at least coming in to the club. So over to you, Richard. You've got a few targets you want to tell us about.
Yeah, kind of in the same vein as what we're talking about, because you can imagine with some of these guys, what kind of back line we're going to look like in conjunction with having a 6'8" goalkeeper if he ends up starting, right? So we go from a relative area of weakness where we don't have the physical profile that we need other than Bali, right? He's a fantastic center back, but then you now incorporate some of these guys. So many of you might be familiar with this gentleman here, Yaka Biol, 25 years old, 6'3". So of the targets we're looking at, are of the people that have been sort of thrown out there on Twitter and other places as it relates to who we might be looking at. He's kind of at the top of the list, and he's the most current one that we've been looking at. But he started out as one that we were initially looking at, and then it kind of seemed to cool, and then he surfaced again. But one thing I think is clear about this guy, he has plenty of experience, right? So he's got enough starts as a senior club player, but he's also got a lot of international experience, and we saw how well he played against us in the Euros, right? So incredibly physical, brilliant in aerial duels. He scored a few goals off of headers, but in terms of how he positions his athleticism to get up over guys that may be relatively the same height or taller than him is elite. So that's something that we obviously need, right? So highly physical tackler, adept in intercepting passes, really, really aggressive, and I like that about him. Now, granted, when you're that kind of person, and Merlot's kind of can be aggressive as well. When you get into that sort of frame of mind, you can draw a lot of fouls, and he does tend to get fouls frequently when he plays. But that's all right. I like the aggressiveness. I like the fact that he's going to command that area, specifically the box in and of itself. He's really good at defending that box. So the next guy that we're kind of looking at as well, Strahinja Pavlovic, who plays for Serbia. Comp is Ibrahima Konate, who you're probably familiar with, Callum, as a Liverpool player. I think we're probably all familiar with him. Great player. So that says a lot about this guy. But where he shines, and this is what I would say, there's a physical profile here and an age grouping that we're looking at, right? Clearly. We're looking at guys who are 22 to 25 years old. We're looking at guys that are, in excess of 6'3" to 6'5", 6, even as tall as 6'6". But we're also looking at two different styles of players too, because we've got the Willy Bally style and then the Murillo style, right? Murillo's more of a, progress the ball up the field. He's good at his feet, and that's the kind of guy this guy is. Good passer, not a elite passer, but where he does shine is how he takes on opposing players, and he has a very high success rate of being able to take on these opposing players. So he's just got a bit of a different approach to how he plays the game. Different style, like I said, stylistically very different, but at the same time, it's something he does offer. Great tackler, positions himself well. He can get assists. He's got a few goals in him as well. I think he had 3 goals for RB Salzburg last year, but now he's being linked with AC Milan, so he may not necessarily be a potential target that we're going to continue to go forward with. This guy, I think, is very clearly, or has been very clearly, on the radar just because of our dealings with Lyon. So Jake O'Brien, he's made 2 appearances for Ireland. Huge physical guy, 6'6". Surprisingly though, not bad, but not elite in the air. So you would think a guy that big would probably have like an aerial dual win rate and in the 90 percentile, 90 plus percentile, but he doesn't. So, but what he is good at, and remarkably better than Murillo, who a lot of us I think would associate with Murillo, is his ability to pass the ball and at a great distance too, right? We're talking about pinging the ball to your wingers and to your striker, like you did with Chris Wood against Newcastle. But this guy actually has a 30% higher accuracy rate percentage of completing passes over 30 yards, which for today's game I think is a really nice wrinkle to have, a really nice skill set to have for what we want to do as a club, just to have a little bit more options, a little bit more variety of what we're doing in terms of how we play. But in terms of his ability to defend the box, good, above average, but not elite. And then you guys please jump in if you have any thoughts. But and then the last guy, right? The last guy, and by the way, most of these guys seemingly play a lot on the right side of the center back position, not on the left. Pavlovic is left-footed. He's the only one of these that we've looked at that is left-footed. But this gentleman, I think, is more of a project. He kind of has a physical profile similar to, he's a little bit taller, but similar to Niakate. And when you watch the highlights of him, granted it's YouTube highlights, it's always going to make the player shine when you're looking at a YouTube highlight. But in reality, he actually seems very similar, very adept at taking on guys that are a little bit smaller and a little bit more athletic, but still able to maintain his position. And what I noticed when watching him was he doesn't tend to get into a lot of situations where he's going to stick his foot in and he's going to be a little bit more aggressive, like you would see someone like Jakob Biol. But he is going to be a guy that positions himself well to shield players, especially guys who are a little bit more athletic, and he takes good angles, so that's good. But he is elite as well in the air, so that's a good situation for us when it comes to set pieces. So what I don't see with him is highly effective with the ball at his feet. He's not highly accurate with longer passes, but the short to mid-range balls does very well. So, which you would imagine for a center back, that's more often than not what you're going to be looking for. So, but he doesn't defend the box really well, other than the fact that he does tend to be really adept at being able to clear the ball. And as balls are coming across, he may not be necessarily heading all of them away per se with any great amount of power, but he is actually able to intercept those passes, which is great. Because just like Jakob Biol, you want that guy who can, keep that ball away from that goal, like any center back position would want to. But in the way that he does it, I think it's more in body positioning and how he can intercept out balls coming across, but not necessarily with his head. So that's been my little spiel on these guys. A lot of potential here, a lot of youth and a lot of opportunity for us to grow these players and hopefully get turn them into assets potentially.
The two names that have stood out really, I suppose, are Callum O'Brien and
Jake O'Brien.
Sorry, I beg your pardon, Jake
no
O'Brien.
worries.
Sorry, I'm looking at Callum. Jake O'Brien and obviously Jakob Biol. So Callum, out of those ones, do you know anything about any of those apart from what we've perhaps talked about? Anyone? I mean, Biol seems to stand out at the Euros, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was great detail. Thanks for that, Richard, because that was really interesting. Great detail. I think, yeah, exactly. The Biol and O'Brien are the two that stand out for me. I don't know a massive amount about any of them. Biol stood out for his country, which I did see in the Euros. Jake O'Brien, I've tried to look into a little bit more because it seems more likely. I know that Wolves had an inquiry about him today. Were put off by the price. So there's a kind of clear sort of profile there with the height, and I think that is what the club, with the set pieces and with Murillo being shorter than most, I think that's what they're looking at, is someone that can partner him, which to me is kind of indicating that we are going to keep him, and I do feel like they want to keep him. I don't know if we're going to see too many clubs matching the 60-70 million pounds price tag, so I think they're kind of banking on him staying and looking for a partner for him, because Willy Bolly's been great, but he's not going to see out a full season. What's interesting as well is that the last player, I think it was the Le Havre player that you showed us there, I saw him recently, and yeah, he would look like kind of a project as well, and maybe a Niakate replacement. So if you're looking at two defenders, you're looking at one that could hopefully start week in, week out with Murillo, and you're looking for one that can try and put himself in the frame, a little bit like Bamidele. So yeah, I mean, that detail was amazing on all of the players, and really interesting as well. But the thing that stood out to me there is the height, and I think the good thing there about Kinku as well is the elite on aerial duels, because I think that's something that they're going to be a little bit paranoid about. I'm a little bit paranoid about going into the season with Murillo. Is that it doesn't. We know what he's good at. We need someone next to him who's going to be aerially dominant or big. As well. So yeah, it's interesting to see what they're aiming for. It would say to me that we're going to be keeping, well, they're hoping to be keeping Murillo. But some exciting names, and I hope we get it right.
Yeah, and the other thing, oh, go ahead.
Sorry,
Greg.
I was going to just say that it feels like we definitely need two. We've lost Felipe, we've lost Niakate. So we've got Bolly, we've got Murillo, we've got Bamidele. So I absolutely feel like we need two centre-backs as it currently stands. Possibly even three if Murillo's going to go. Possibly even three if we're going to go to a three at the back, which I feel like we may do, because I believe, or I know that Nuno likes that formation. And something that Richard and I have spoken about, is there a possibility, and how would you feel, Callum, about Murillo being transformed into a left back or a left wing back? I personally feel that would be his best position. I think at 5'11", he's too short as a centre-back. I think that he's an amazingly talented guy, but I just personally feel like he's tailor-made for that left-back position. He's a marauder. He can carry the ball. He can pass. He smacks of Roberto Carlos in many, many ways. I'm just not sure that he is the ideal centre-back. And we are looking at Land of the Giants with 6'8" goalkeeper, a potentially 6'6" Jake O'Brien, 6'5" chap from Le Havre. The other one is 6'4". I mean, Murillo he won't stand out. He'll stand down in amongst those lot. So left back Murillo, yes or no?
I'm glad you said Roberto Carlos before, because I always embarrassed myself. The name I had was Rivaldo, and he was never a left back. He just looks. If you put him in that old Brazil kit, that is Roberto Carlos to a T, isn't it? I'm there. I know a lot of people have a lot to say when people say to put him in midfield or in a different position and all this kind of stuff. And I think left back. I think he suits it. He looks it. He's kind of like that player that Arsenal and Man City are moulding at the moment, that Calafiori sort of player that can be a centre-back or left-back or left-sided centre-back when they're trying to put a player into midfield, a free at the back sort of thing. So I'm completely on board with it, because It is where he's lacking a bit is height. Everything else, the way he runs with the ball, the way he can get past the player, we just need a little bit of sort of security as well around that. And sometimes when he's running through the middle of the park, it's great. But we saw against Liverpool last season, it left a little bit of a hole in the back as well. So it'd be good to see a little bit more of that from him with the security. I'm not against it at all. I just don't know if it would happen or it's going to happen. And I also really like Arlena left back as well. But yeah, left side to centre back. I could see him at left back. I wouldn't say no myself. I wouldn't hate it. No.
I think that Liverpool were touted as being interested, and again, it's just a rumor that I heard that they were the ones that were interested in turning him into a left back as well. So I think that's possibly in thought processes somewhere. Whether it's in Nuno's, we don't know. Richard, you were going to say something a minute ago. I cut you off.
Well, no, you're good. I was going to say that, obviously we don't know what would happen with Lyon just because of the dealings that we've had related to Mangala and Niakate already, right? So we have no idea from a money standpoint, exchange of funds standpoint. Yeah, I agree with Dan completely. I think that'd be a great thing to see just to try it out. But from a cost standpoint, if there's any truth to the price that they're looking at O'Brien, I know Everton put a bid in for him apparently over the weekend, last weekend for like close to 17 million pounds, right? But we're saying supposedly that we're willing to make a bid of like 30+ million pounds. So I don't know at the moment, even though I like what he could offer, because I think he is a bit of a hybrid between a Murillo and a Bali. To me, that would be a little bit too pricey given the depth and other positions that we have that are of need right now.
If we're offering Leon that kind of money, it has got to be that we're giving them money back on the Niakate deal, because the Niakate money was ludicrous. 27 million. It got us out of a hole. It sorted out the PSR, and I am to my dying day. If Jake O'Brien comes here and we paid him 35 million pounds or euros, it has got to be that we are giving them back some of the Niakate money.
I agree.
And that has already been established. So it's a false figure. 35 million is not the real figure.
Right.
It's basically them doing the deal behind closed doors.
Certainly, yeah. But I'm just saying in terms of what's being thrown out there, I agree with you 100%. And that's why I think he'd be and obviously everything's inflated right now anyway, right? But at the same time, Yakabiol is somewhere in around 12 million. And so he's fitting pretty much the same sort of range of what we paid for Murillo, but he's clearly got a lot more experience, right? And he's a different kind of player in terms of what he's going to offer our club. And most of these guys, as you mentioned, Callum, are probably going to slot right in or going to be somewhat of a potential replacement for Murillo, but a lot of it is more potentially to replace Bali, because Bali, as you've stated, I think is he on his last year? This is his last year of
he just signed an extension,
right?
Yeah.
So it's possible he doesn't come back. So what is your contingency there? I would say Yakabiol is a perfect fit for that. Jake O'Brien you see if you watch the highlights, tends to play more on the left side in a back three, and will switch over to the left and be pretty adept at it versus someone like King Kue, who's playing exclusively on the right. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But I definitely like where we're headed, because I think we have to go that direction, or if we move Murillo over to the left, great. I'd love to see it. Greg, you and I have been in accord on that for a while now, but we'll see what happens.
O'Brien's 23, Biel's 25. The age profile seems to fit.
Yep.
It's clear that we're going to be bringing centre backs in, and these names have been touted. David Carmo was another one that's been mentioned, and there may well be one or two others as well. So we're going off the rumour mill a little bit, and hopefully those watching and listening have maybe learned a little bit about one or two of those players. Richard, thank you for going in depth. Our resident stato on Talking Reds there. Good work. Thank you very much indeed for that. Okay, we're at the end, guys. So we hope that you will consider liking this episode. It really helps us out if you would consider subscribing. We're doing our best to get our subscribers up. It's a way of YouTube presenting us to other people. So the more subscribers we've got, the better it is. We're just under the 400 mark now, and we're grateful for that. We've only been going a couple of months, and there's lots of things you could be watching. And if you've been tuning in and listening, we're really grateful, and we really thank you for for listening to what we've got to say. I'll say it again. We are very keen to hear your thoughts and views. So if you'd like to come on Talking Reds, we have a chair there for a guest to come on and get involved in the conversation. You can find us on our X profile. You can message us there. If you've got something to say, then by all means, you are very, very welcome. We are just about out of time. I think we've got time quickly for an NFR, a non-Forest related piece or topic rather, and it can only really be the Euros. It can only really be England and last night, and how all of a sudden we've gone from down in the dumps to back in the final again. Callum, how much of an achievement is it for this England team to be in the final again on Sunday?
Yeah, it's huge, and I think the frustration was that we wanted it to be a lot more exciting and a little bit more sweeping the lower nations aside, and then coming up against these types of teams, the bigger teams, and giving them a good game. And I started to feel like last night a little bit like when the Netherlands were moving their pieces around and Koeman was making early changes and packing out the midfield. I actually started to think maybe the reason we struggled against the lower nations is because they sat so deep and made it difficult for us to play through them. And as soon as we came up against a team that looked like they wanted to attack us, we looked great and they looked vulnerable. And they had to change their game plan. And it's a great achievement. I'm looking forward to that Spain game because I feel like that is the epitome of a team that are going to open up for us. So I think it's going to be an interesting game, an interesting matchup. Yeah, it's amazing. I can't wipe Ollie Watkins' face out of my mind. I just feel like that was his face when he scored that goal. It was like we've all done it as a kid. I did it all the time in Clifton with the garages. I would pretend to be scoring. It was the playoff final, or it was the winner in the Euros or something like that. We've all done that where the last minute of a game to take your club or your country to a major trophy or tournament or something along those lines. We've all imagined it, and it was just like watching his face was like seeing his reaction as a kid. Like it was like seeing this kind of fantasy come to life, and he just couldn't believe it. And it's amazing because he's just got into the top four. He's just qualified for Champions League football, and he's come from lower leagues as well. So it's like you've seen someone who just really appreciated in that moment playing for England and scoring that goal, and it was amazing. It's great for different players because Bellingham obviously the other day was who else, and that's his reaction and that's his sort of persona and a little bit of arrogance that he brings as part of himself. But it was also great to just see someone who was just like, what have I just done? And that was it. And I can't take it out of my mind. It's made me smile all day.
Yeah, I mean, everything you've just said, I completely feel the same. His face was just that face that you talk about, and it reminded me of Marco Tardelli, 1982 World Cup, the iconic celebration when he scored the goal in the World Cup final, and he wheels away and he runs away and he's screaming, and it's an iconic moment. And you're a bit too young to perhaps know the reference, but I'd encourage you to go and look it up, Callum. But in that moment when he's wheeled away and running away, he's screaming something, and what he's screaming is his own name. He's screaming Tardelli, Tardelli. And it was because he remembered being a child, playing football on the streets and imagining the commentary and him scoring the goal in the World Cup final and the commentator screaming, it's Tardelli, it's Tardelli. And he, in that moment, just recreated that part from his youth where he had played on the streets. And as soon as I saw Ollie Watkins last night, it just reminded me of that Tardelli moment. Everything you've described was perfect. Then Callum, his face was like, just look at his face. I'm so happy for him. It's ridiculous. So happy for him. And for the squad to all seem to like they're playing a part. It has been bitty. I feel like, I put a tweet out at the start. Look, sometimes you grow into a tournament, and I feel like we've definitely grown into this. We've not been great, but last night we were very good in the first half. But for Bukayo Saka to get redemption from the penalty spot, for him to score that beautiful goal, the last minute overhead kick from Bellingham, the Tony penalty, the Trent penalty, coming from behind in 3 games to still be in it. I kind of feel like the name is on the trophy, and we're going to do it. We're going to beat this Spanish team. It's not going to be easy because they are a very good team, but we're going to win on Sunday, and it's coming home. Hey, Richard.
I would agree with that 100%. Absolutely.
Okay. So, Callum, it's been absolutely fantastic to have you with us. So grateful for you giving up some time to come and chat Forest with us. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
No, just I really enjoyed that. Thank you both so much for having me. It was a really good chat and a lot of in-depth statistics there. I really enjoyed that. And thanks so much for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're very, very welcome. Richard, over in Oklahoma, is in the middle of the day there, whilst we're approaching 8:15 in the evening. Thanks very much, Richard. It's been great to have you, and that in-depth look at those players was awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Thanks, Callum.
Okay, this has been the one with Callum Castel. We hope that you've enjoyed it. We hope that you will like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.